Hey guys, I'm back here with another SQL tutorial. In today's video, we'll be going over an interview question on SQL. This problem was more on the more complex side, so we'll try to break it down into simpler steps and hopefully make it simpler for you in case you run into something like this in the future. So let's take a look at the problem that we have. So as you can see here, I'll just start with the design of the table. We just have normal table with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or just 5 columns. And um, it says on an online recruiting platform, each recruiting company can make a request for their candidates to complete a personalized skill assessment. The assessment can contain tasks in 3 categories: SQL, algo, and bug fixing. Following the assessment, the company receives a report containing for each candidate their declared years of experience, an integer between 0 and 100, and their score in each category. The score is the number of points from 0 to 100 or null, which means there was no task in this category. And as we went over before, this is the structure of the table, and this is what's asked from us. So your task is to write an SQL query that for each different length of experience counts the number of candidates with precisely that amount of experience and how many of them got a perfect score in each category in which they were requested to solve tasks. So a null score is here treated as a perfect score. So this first part is asking us to count the number of experiences. Different, whenever I see different or unique, I automatically, in my head, I think of the function distinct. So obviously here we're gonna have to use the distinct keyword on experience. And then I'm seeing that we're also gonna need to use the count, an aggregate function, and it says counts the number of candidates. So the only unique or the primary key of this table is the ID. So we're also gonna have to count the ID. And let's move on. Your query should return a table containing the following columns: experience, each candidate's years of experience; max, number of the assessments achieving the maximum score; count, total number of assessments. Rows should be ordered by decreasing experience. So again, once more, I'm seeing that we're gonna have to do a max, okay, or in this case we're gonna have to do a count of the number of assessments, but we're gonna have to order by decreasing. So pretty much starting with the bigger values going down to lesser values. And they were also kind enough to give us an example. So this is the example, this is the given table based on the design that they give us. And I've created this table in my query editor. We'll take a look at it there. But simply, these are the 3 columns that they want us to query: experience, max, count. So as you can see here, experience only has the distinct experience, number of experience. So these are the number of years. So we have 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, 5 and 5. But since they only said different, we're gonna have to do distinct. So, and we're gonna order by experience as well. So we're gonna see 5, 3, 1. This is simple. Count, we're doing the count of IDs here. So for 3 years, we only have 3 years experience, we only have 1 ID. For 5 years experience, we have 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 people with 5 years worth of experience. And for 1 year of experience, we only have 1 person. So this is also the count ID function that we're gonna do. I would say the most complicated part of this question is figuring out the max, as it requires us to do multiple things. Simply, do you want us to do anything that says 100 or null? That's counted as a max score. So, for example, if we go to the 5-year experience, okay, so the first one we have null, 100, 100. That's counted as 1. That's a max value. Because back here they said even a null score is treated as a perfect score. Okay. Second one we have 150 null. Then that's not a max value. That's not a perfect score. Lastly, we have 100, 100, 100. So in total, this is a max score. So in total, we have 2. And so on. For example, with 3 years, we only have 1 person with 3 years. And here it says 100, null, 50. So that's not a max. So it's gonna be a 0. And same with 1 year. So let's open the query editor and take a look at this in more detail. So this is pretty much the same table that was given. I've created it and also inserted the values in it just to make it easier for us and for us to see our progress whenever I'm taking an interview. If possible, if applicable, I prefer to create the table just so that I can see my progress as I'm running the code, see what it's looking like and such. That's only if I have enough time and if it's allowed. So let's go back here, and basically we just want to turn this into this. So let's get started. And as I've mentioned, experience and count are the simplest 2 columns, so we can go ahead and get started with these, and then later we can figure out what we're gonna do with the max. Okay, so as I've mentioned, we're gonna do distinct experience. Okay, and they wanted it to call it exp, and we're gonna do the count ID, if you guys remember that as well, because that's our primary key, that's the unique value in our table. And they want it to call it count. Let's go ahead and execute this code and let's see what's going on. Okay, so I know that so far this is correct. Next, we'd have to do a group by, and since we're using an aggregate function up here, we have to just count by it. So we're gonna we have to group by it, so we'll have to group by experience. And always remember that whenever we have an aggregate function in our query, we need a group by clause. and I am not necessarily sure what's going on here. Let's take a look. Here we go. Okay, it looks like only this line was highlighted or selected. So and also let's get it to match that table that they wanted us to get to, so we're gonna have to go with that and descending, and here we go. So that wasn't too bad. We have our experience and count, as you guys can see here. Experience, count, everything looks correct. 3 people with 5 years of experience, 1 with 3, 1 with 1. Okay, so our next step is to work on the max. So what we need to do, there are a couple of things that we need to do, or actually more than a couple. So we have to go with a subquery that will figure out the max value for us, and we're also gonna have to do a self join. Okay, and it's gonna be a left self join. So let's go ahead and get started. So we can go ahead and just work on the max right now, so we can take a look at what it looks like, and then later we can work on the join and adding the value to this original table. So select, pretty much the same. Let's go ahead and do count. I'll explain this in a little bit. As max, okay, from assessment. And again, this is the tricky part. We only want to count perfect scores, so 100 or null. Okay, so let's go ahead and say where, let me move it up here, and let's open our parentheses, and since we have a few columns, then we're gonna add a few conditions, not just one. So where SQL equals 100 or SQL is null. That's our first condition, and we're also gonna add this in a pair of parentheses. Secondly, so this was the first condition, and open parentheses, algo equals 100 or algo is null. And last condition, which is the bug fixing right here. So we took care of these 2 columns. We're worrying about this one now. And bug fixing equals 100 or bug fixing is null. So only perfect score, 100 or null values will be counted. Okay, and since we have an aggregate function, you guys know it, we're gonna have to go with a group by experience. and this would be out of our parentheses, so let me close the parentheses for the where, and let's take a look at this specific part of the code. So as you can see here, we are getting 1 and 2. If we go back to our example, we have 1 and 2. And for 0, it's detecting 0, but since it's null, it's not showing up here in the query. So we're gonna have to go with the isNull function, and it's basically telling it whenever you see a 0, just show us the 0, or whenever you see the null value in here, just print out a 0 instead. Okay, so this was one part of this subquery. So let's just go ahead and put the entire subquery in a pair of parentheses, and we can just call it as just as ABC, for example. Doesn't really matter as long as you know where everything's coming from. And for here, let's also give this table an alias, so we're gonna call this table as table A. Okay, and from here, of course, this will cause some confusion, so we're just gonna since we have the subquery here, so let me, before I do that, since we have the subquery here and we have two tables, same table, but when the query editor looks at it, it's gonna think that there are two different tables. So basically we just have to tell it where everything is coming from, since we're gonna have experience in this table and also experience coming from here. We're gonna have ID in this table and also ID coming from here. But remember, for the query editor, it's gonna think of this as an entire different table. And once we get to the join step, we're gonna run into some issues, so that's why I'm taking care of that right now. So basically we're gonna pull the experience from this table, the original one, also the ID, and let's go ahead and make a join between these two tables. So let's do a join, and I'll also show you why a join is not gonna work, but let's take a look. I'll do that in a little bit after the following steps. So this is our subquery. So down here, we're just gonna go and say on. Okay, so join on, they come together. abc.experience, and basically we have to also add the experience to here, because this is our joining condition. Equals, so experience from here is the same as experience from up here. And also let's go ahead and do the distinct experience. So this is our joining condition. Okay, and the next step is to, since we have joined the two tables, we're just gonna go up here. So before we only had the experience, exp, and the count. We just have to add the max. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. and this would be the abc.max. And with this here, we're gonna do the is null, because remember guys, this only showed us two values. We're missing the 0, so we're gonna do is null and if this value is null, just print out 0. Okay, and let's see, it's confusing this with the keyword, so let's go ahead and just give this a different name, and I'm gonna say as max up here, and okay, so let's go over what I just did. So we did a join with this subquery. Basically, this subquery is, it's same table, we're doing self join, we're calling it here with this table, we're calling it A. In this instance right here, we're calling it ABC. This would just give us the experience and the count of IDs. With this, we're gonna be able to see the max value based on these conditions, and from there with the join, we just basically putting the max from here up here next to the experience and the count. So let's go ahead, and remember guys, I told you join might not work, but let's take a look. Okay, so also the group by that we had here is not working because same thing, it's confused. It's basically, it says it's ambiguous, so it's basically telling us, do you want to use this experience from here, even though they're the same. It's telling us, do you want to use this experience from this table or this experience. So we're just gonna go down here and say we want to use it from the original table, and since we added another aggregate function up here, we have to group by it. And same. Okay, so same thing, whenever we have an aggregate function up here, which is the count, we have to group by the other two columns, so experience and max. And let's take a look at this code. Let me just add a space here to separate the subquery. Execute. Okay, so here we go. We got all our values. These two records are correct. But since we're using a join, an inner join, it's showing us the records that are matching. But remember, we have one value here, I believe it's experience 3. This one does not have a matching value from the max column, does not have a matching value from here, coming up from here. So in this case, we're gonna have to do a left join. So basically we're telling it, show us all the experiences that we have, regardless if we have a null, a 0 in this column max. So let's go ahead and do left, and this should take care of the issue. And normally if we did not have that is null, let me go back here, Control X, this would show as null. It's pretty close to this, to the original answer, or to the sample that they gave us, but they wanted a 0, so we just had to do that is null function. And that was it. I hope this helped you guys to go through similar questions. I got this in an interview. It was a little bit challenging. As you see, it's not a simple query, but once you break it into smaller steps, you should be fine. During the interview, I was able to figure out the experienced account really quickly with Max. I also found it, but I had to work on the conditions a little bit. I made sure that all the conditions are matching what they're asking for, and I also had to think about the left join, because here I was not getting that value. I was not getting this row. I was just skipping it, so we had to do with that. I had to go with the left join. Show us everything from here, from these two columns, and regardless if they have a matching record or not from this column. So in this case they don't, but we're still, everything else is shown here. And I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know if you have any comments or questions about this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.